Chapter 1 Death Before the Feast. At noon, Colin Hartley cast the last handful of barley into the plowed ground, tossed the empty sack over his shoulder, and started for the manor house a mile away. Colin, where do you think you're going? Big Jake, the overseer of the peasants, halted the oxen near the road for the noonday rest. Colin smiled. He was not afraid of Jake's bluff ways. Sir William is going to take me up the hill to the old Roman fort. He wants me to learn the Latin names to things. After that, I'm to be Lady Walsh's page boy for the banquet tonight. Colin unslung his sack. See, I sowed all the barley seed. Jake motioned for him to sit down, broke off a hunk of brown bread, and handed a piece to Colin. So, Sir William isn't satisfied teaching you to read and write in English, eh? He chuckled. He thinks you're a pretty smart boy, doesn't he? But don't forget, I was the one who found you and gave you a name. 10 years ago Easter, it was. There you were, a newborn baby, abandoned in a muddy ditch. You were no bigger than a handspan, but you yelled as loud as 10 men. Colin squirmed and nibbled his bread. Jake chuckled again. Does Lady Walsh know you're going with Sir William? His tone of voice troubled Colin. Do you think she would mind? I certainly do. But why? Because you pester Sir William with questions all the time. After all, he is hired to tutor the Walsh children, not a peasant boy. Colin felt his cheeks grow hot. But I want to learn about things, about books. Words have magic. You've said so yourself dozens of times. Jake nodded. Yes, words have magic, powerful magic. When Sir William preaches on Sabbath, his word magic goes through my very bones. It's strange how such a little man can have so much power. What else can you call it but magic? Colin didn't know how to answer. He finished his bread, picked up his sack, and grinned at Jake. When you get back from the fort, Jake said, come and teach me what you learned. And I won't tell Lady Walsh where you were. Is that a bargain? Colin agreed, waved goodbye to Jake, and skipped along the road near the woods. A few minutes later, the thud of hoofbeats startled him. Who could be coming to Little Sodbury in such a hurry this time of day? Couldn't be William Tyndale. He always walked to the village and back on the days he visited the sick. The horseman, holding a handkerchief to his face, galloped up and reined the horse to a stop. Blood streamed all over the man's face from a cut on his forehead. Colin could tell that the man was young. Don't you know me, Colin? The cultured voice sounded urgent and somehow familiar. Colin remembered. Why, you're the messenger from Oxford University. What did you bring Sir William this time? A most important book. The messenger tapped a bulky saddlebag. A dangerous book. Twisted in the saddle and listened. Do you see a band of monks? Did you see a band of monks come by here? Why, no, sir. Why would they come to Little Sodbury? Because they're after this book. Once again, the messenger tapped the saddlebag. They aren't really monks, they're Cardinal Wolsey's spies. At the word spies made Colin's scalp prickle. Colin Wolsey, the High Chancellor of England, had almost as much power as King Henry. But why would he send spies to a country manor house? Did they give you that cut over your eye? He asked the messenger. No, a branch nicked me. The messenger looked at his blood-stained handkerchief. But this is a sign of bloodshed to come. Colin could not believe such words. Who would want to hurt anyone on such a beautiful spring day? Was the messenger from Oxford really telling the truth? I don't dare linger. The messenger scans the woods with an uneasy glance. These days, anything can happen. He leaned toward Colin. God must have sent you to meet me. Are you a brave boy? Would you do something for Sir William? A feeling of daring loyalty quickened Colin's pulse. I'll do anything for him. He's my teacher. See that he gets this book. The messenger lifted a heavy book from the saddlebag. Don't let anyone see it. Colin unslung his sack and laid the book inside. What's the name of this book? It's Luther's New Testament. Oh, I know about that, Colin said with satisfaction. Sir William told me. Was it smuggled from Germany? The messenger nodded. Yes, it was smuggled, and Cardinal Wolsey says that he will burn every copy he can find. His spies are everywhere, in all kinds of disguises, so be careful. Can you go to Sir William's room without being seen? Colin thought for a moment. I'm sure I can get upstairs all right, he said. Lady Walsh and the servants must be busy getting ready for the banquet tonight. The messenger from Oxford turned his horse toward the woods. If you think anyone is spying on you, hide the book, he added. May God be with you. When the messenger had gone, Colin started toward the manor house. With each step, Luther's New Testament grew heavier. Even a sackful of seed did not weigh as much. Colin hoisted the sack from one shoulder to the other. He kept close to the outbuildings, crossed the yard to the chapel, then crept past the bushes bordering the large manor house. The front entrance was empty. Colin tiptoed upstairs and set the sack on Tyndale's study table. He started to leave, then turned back. What word magic had Luther put in his New Testament? Colin opened the book. To his disappointment, he saw a mass of fat black letters with peaks and points. Colin could not make out one letter of the strange print. He sighed, wishing he knew as many languages as William Tyndale. Perhaps Sir William would let him learn German if he did well with Latin. Colin puzzled over the pages, forgetting the time. Muffled shouts and high-pitched screams from downstairs sent the blood pounding through his body. He tiptoed to the top of the stairs and looked down into the entrance hall. Servants had just laid out a young man on the rushes near the door. Blood seeped through the young man's dark hair. Colin could not see his face, but he could tell it was the messenger from Oxford University. And he knew, too, that more than a tree branch had caused these wounds. A strange fear swelled up within Colin. He clung to the banister, watching the scene below. Lady Walsh, holding her long skirts back, directed the servants to bring a basin of water and cloths. She turned from one servant to another. Who is it? What was he doing here at Little Sodbury? No one could answer until Jake, looking out of place in his rough brown work tunic, pushed his way through the others. I saw him staggering out of the woods, Lady Walsh. 3 or 4 men with cowls over their heads kept hitting him with their staves. When they saw me, they ran back. That's all I can tell you. The servant let out a piercing scream. Lady Walsh, he's dead, he's dead. She pointed to the limp figure. At once a groan of horror broke out from the others. Lady Walsh turned white, put her hands to her throat, and closed her eyes for an instant. Then she straightened. Nonsense. He's only fainted. Fix up a bed for him in the side room of the chapel. Tell no one about this. Remember, we have a banquet tonight. Important men of the church will be here in just a few more hours. Wash out the bloodstains and put clean rushes on the floor. All of you, go back to your work. When the entrance hall was empty, Colin started down the stairs. Sick and dizzy, thoughts of the big book upstairs haunted him. That book, with its odd-shaped black letters, contained fatal word magic. Death had come to the young man who carried the book. Colin knew without question that the messenger was dead. Lady Walsh's denial had not fooled him. If William Tyndale kept the book, would it not bring death to him also? Wouldn't it be better if Tyndale never saw the book? Without hesitation, Colin ran back to William Tyndale's room and put Luther's New Testament into the sack. If he could manage to slip past the kitchen servants on the first floor, he would have no trouble reaching the stable. He could hide the book inside someplace. The weight of the book, coupled with his growing fear, forced Colin to breathe in noisy gasps. At the bottom of the stairs, he stopped to catch his breath. He could hear the servants talking. A bad omen. Death before a banquet, a maidservant said. I feel so all of a tremble. I do not know. I don't know that I can keep on. Her voice rose. Look at this mountain of vegetables. I thought the men of the church didn't eat much. Someone giggled. They'll eat everything except the salt cellars. Her voice dropped into a hissing whisper. I think there's a dead man out in the chapel. Gives me the shivers. Colin heard the sound of iron kettles scraping the fireplace. Lady Walsh said he wasn't dead. He heard the cook say, I've seen death before, and I know better. Why don't those churchmen get together and raise that poor young man to life? They keep coming here eating at Sir John's board and getting fatter all the time. What good is all their talk? They come here to hear William Tyndale. That's what. They say he knows almost more than anybody in England. Another servant said, I know for a fact, though, that a lot of those men are jealous of him. Colin darted past the kitchen doorway. No one looked up. Without a backward glance, he raced toward the gloomy shadows of the stable doorway and stepped inside. Colin! It was Lady Walsh's voice right behind him. Come out and give me whatever it is you're hiding in that sack. Trembling with the shock of discovery, Colin sprawled headlong into a feed bin. He let go of the sack and lay still, trying to shut out Lady Walsh's words. Come out, Colin. Lady Walsh spoke firmly. Colin gritted his teeth, determined not to give up Luther's dangerous book. He turned to the stable doorway, but did not look up at Lady Walsh. He knew exactly how she appeared. Her brown eyes, straight nose, and small mouth, her hair hidden by the peaked headdress flowing to her shoulders. He caught a glimpse of the red embroidery of her gown, as red as the blood of the messenger. Luther's book would bring still more bloodshed. A book that brought death to people shouldn't be in anyone's hands. Give it to me, Colin, whatever it is you've taken from the house. What reason is there for you to steal? Haven't Sir John and I given you a home, clothes, and food? Don't you realize you are a waif, a foundling, an orphan? Colin bit his lip, but said nothing. Answer me, Lady Walsh said. I'm afraid you are a born troublemaker. What William Tyndale sees in you, I don't know. A man's voice interrupted. What is this about, Lady Walsh? Colin looked up. William Tyndale, a small man with a long, narrow face and intense, burning eyes, stood in the stable doorway. They tell me a young man was brought here. Is that true? I have reason to believe he is a friend of mine from Oxford. Where is he? In the chapel. Come with me. Lady Walsh turned away without another word to Colin. With desperate speed, Colin burrowed into the deepest feed bin he could find and hid the sack containing Luther's New Testament. He waited until almost dark before going back to the manor house. Lady Walsh was directing the servants with feverish intentness. When she saw Colin, she grasped him by the shoulder. He stiffened, expecting her to demand the book. Instead, she shook her head. You can't serve my guests looking like that, Colin. Colin looked down at his knee-length tunic. The coarse, unbleached cloth was stained from constant wear. My nephew wasn't much larger than you when he was my page boy. I wonder. Wait here. In a few moments, she appeared with several garments over her arm and held them out to Colin. He fingered the silky cloth and, as in a dream, slipped on a finely woven white shirt with full sleeves tied at the wrist, a blue jerkin bonds in velvet, and a flat circle of a cap of the same blue. He pulled up thigh-length hose and wriggled his feet into wide-toed leather shoes. Lady Walsh murmured approvingly, That's better. Now go stand out in front when the guests arrive and direct the grooms to the stable. They can wait out there with the horses until the banquet is over. Colin's heart lurched. There would be many horses, and the horses would nibble in the feed bins. What if they nuzzled Luther's book into the open? He knew it was not likely, and yet the thought bothered him so much he could not bear to think of leaving the book in the feed bin. Already it was too late to go after it. The first guest had arrived on horseback. The groom on another horse rode behind. The guest, a fat, pasty-faced abbot, dismounted with many grunts and mutters. Colin disliked him at first sight. The abbot's wide-sleeved gown hung unevenly over the protruding stomach. A fringe of hair showed at the edge of his tight-fitting skull-cap. Colin's disgust sprang from the peevish expression on the abbot's face and his biting comments to the groom, spoken so fast Colin could not hear. Perhaps this man was a spy for Cardinal Wolsey. Who could tell? Colin directed the groom to the stable and then ran ahead to remove the sack containing Luther's book. With sudden inspiration, Colin packed feet around the book and fastened the top of the sack in a knot. But where could he hide it now? The only thing he could do was find William Tyndale and tell him the whole story. Colin started toward the house, then stopped. The abbot was talking in a surly voice. The groom kept nodding. Tyndale's no fool, the abbot said. He knows exactly the trouble he's asking for by having Luther's heretical translation in his hands. Since you stupid fools lost track of the book this afternoon, we may expect it to turn up almost any place. Perhaps it's just as well. We can catch a lot of birds with one net later on. Colin tried to scurry past unnoticed. Even this page boy here, with his heavy bundle, might be suspect, the abbot said in a heavy, jocular tone. Then he put his hand on Colin's shoulder. Just a minute, boy. What do you have in that sack? Colin jerked free and ran toward the house. After him, the abbot called the groom. See that he does not escape you. The heavy sack bobbed up and down on Colin's shoulders. He made a frantic effort to evade the groom's clutching hands, stumbled, and felt himself being dragged before the abbot. With a deep, shuddering breath, Colin let the sack fall to the ground.